You talked about air losses. We were chatting earlier next door when you showed me some of the graphics you put together. In 1965-66, the air losses for Skyraiders was exceptionally high. Could you cover a little bit of that and tell me, as we looked at it at the beginning of the war, losses were fairly, I would say, acceptable, but then they skyrocketed between 66 to 68, and then they kind of tapered back off. You were saying, what kind of missions were you flying at that time that were so hazardous? And you also were volunteers. Everything.
Oh, hell yes. We could hardly wait. Oh, we could hardly wait. Send me in, coach. I don't smoke. I really didn't smoke. But we were trained to do. That was our job. And that's where the action was, and we could hardly wait, all of us. The Skyraiders first came over in late 64, and they had 3 or 4 or 5 losses. It was a one-off thing, and then by 65, we were really getting serious. I got there in February 65. We had 100 airplanes. They were AD-5s. They called the Fat Spad. Had a side-by-side seating. And early on, for a couple of months in 65 and 66, we had to have a Vietnamese individual military guy in the right seat. Why? Because our airplanes fly in combat now. Our airplanes had Vietnamese markings on them. So it was Bobby McNamara, Secretary of Defense McNamara, a secret war. So we'd been all through near enough a year of counterinsurgency training, learning how to fight the enemy, and so we became air commandos, and we learned to fight on the ground so we could protect our airplanes out in the jungle and what have you, and we got to do some of that. Always armed. Had my own M16 machine gun. Even going to town we were armed, but always on base, because you never knew what was going to happen next. But we were flying close air support. Again, we had 100 airplanes, and we lost 39 of them in the year I was there. Why? Because we're flying close air support. Troops in contact. Last one to die wins. Okay, you don't give up on that. You stay until you're out of ammunition or they're all dead. And right behind you comes another flight of Skyraiders. So, we saved a lot of guys a lot of time. But that was real heavy losses. They weren't all combat losses. Some were training. Right here at Hurlburt, they lost several in training accidents. So, us hot rod jet pilots, Top Gun fighter pilots going into this Skyraider, which is a conventional aircraft tailwheel, that's different. And some of these guys had never flown a piston engine, let alone a tailwheel. Well, I was born and raised in that environment. My dad had a Vultee BT-13 right after the war, and so that's what I grew up in. So that was, God, I could hardly wait to do that. It was like Pappy Boyington and Baba Black Sheep, Oh, geez, it was very exciting. So losses were big because we were up in the mountains. I don't recall ever losing any on a night mission like that and that was nasty stuff. Up in the mountains, and the big battles were in nasty weather, and the jets couldn't fly. They wouldn't even pull night alert. The tack hard killers said, no, we're not doing that. They'd all want to go back to Cannon Air Force Base. So they would go like hell during the day, but they left it to us at night. So we get a little sleep and go back the next day again. As I say, I got 270 missions, but the losses were extremely high then.